Nothing contained in this recording is intended to encourage the use of illegal substances. This recording represents only the opinions of the hosts and their guests and should not be taken as medical or legal advice. In no way does listening, reading, corresponding, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient or legal relationship. The content here is intended to share thoughts and opinions to foster constructive discussion. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions concerning psychedelics. The views expressed by hosts and guests on this recording are not necessarily the views of Psychedelia or any other company with which the hosts and guests are associated.
Hello, fellow traveler. Welcome to Psychedelia, the podcast brought to you by Psychedelia Live. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jeff Zuber. I'm a founder of the law firm Zuber Lawler LLP. Our firm is on the cutting edge of new frontiers, including crypto and esports, cannabis, and psychedelics. We handle all aspects of business, including transactional litigation, and our attorney roster is tops in the legal industry. We're also founders of the pioneering industry magazine Psychedelia, for which this podcast is produced.
Hello, fellow travelers. My name is Los Arias. So good to be here with you all for this amazing episode. As a means of background, I am the CEO of Green Horizons, a large-scale cannabis business in California, in partnership with Boast and Tommy Hilfiger. And I am here to talk to you today about the exciting developments and what is happening in psychedelics and wellness. The first lead-in today is a historic opportunity for Colorado to once again lead the country in progressive drug policy reform, which is on the ballot this November. The Natural Medicine Health Act, which will appear as Proposition 122, seeks to end the decades-long legacy of harmful prohibition of psychedelic drugs and bring opportunities for healing to Coloradoans in desperate need. If passed, the Natural Medicine Health Act would create a tightly controlled and regulated system of service centers where adults 21 and over could receive plant-derived psychedelics under the monitoring of trained facilitators. Jeff has some news that he is eager to share with you all on this subject and a lot more too.
Yes, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, has withdrawn a controversial proposal to ban 5 psychedelic compounds, a decision that's being celebrated by advocates and researchers. And we, of course, covered this in one of our episodes. The DEA first proposed scheduling the compounds in January. And it faced significant criticism, receiving nearly 600 messages during a public comment period, with most opposing the rule change and requesting hearing. The agency's own administrative court subsequently agreed that there was a need to hold a hearing on the matter before the prohibition could be enacted. But while it seemed that the stage was set for an August 22nd hearing, the DEA ultimately decided against it, which is at least a short-term victory for researchers who say that designating the tryptamines as Schedule 1, as proposed, would seriously inhibit studies into their therapeutic potential. So that threat was staved off.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you, Brother Jeff. And in that vein of exciting news, I came across a recent article in Double Blind magazine called Hate the Gym? Microdose workouts could be easier than you think. And the article went into some really interesting stuff about researchers having found that microdose workouts are actually exceedingly beneficial, particularly in a high intensity setting. They've been shown to increase VO2 max, which is the maximum volume of oxygen a person's body can use. To educate us more on this topic, I want to welcome our guests and dear friends. And maybe you guys go ahead and take it from here and introduce yourselves. I think this is going to be an incredible opportunity for the audience to drink in your wisdom on this topic.
My name is Carlos. I'm the co-founder of Medical Health Institute, which is an optimization practice based out of Miami, Florida. And Rudolph Eberwein, our doctor and our partner and friend, is also here with us.
Hi, thanks again, guys. My name is Dr. Rudy Eberwein. Medical director and co-owner of Medical Health Institute and fellow traveler, and excited to be here and talk about this.
Hello, Dr. Rudy and Carlos. Thank you so much for joining us. And just want to let everyone know that we usually do a prep call to discuss everything and get to know each other beforehand. And this prep call just went out of control when started. It's supposed to be brief, supposed to not take up too much of our valuable guest time, and just couldn't stop talking about this issue with regard to general wellness and psychedelics' role in it, which is not the way that I typically thought of this stuff. It's things that I usually talk about, but not in the cohesive the connected manner that Dr. Rudy and Carlos tend to think of it and have caused me to think about it. But let's get started at the beginning. The Medical Health Institute. What's the story behind the Medical Health Institute? And one of the things that we like to say is, a patient coming to you, what's the typical patient experience and what can they expect when they come to the Medical Health Institute?
Right. So I think there's a big difference between, allopathic medicine and just general practice and optimization, right? It's, not dying at 50 and living your best life at 50 or 40 or whatever age that is not the same thing, right? So we focus on optimization. Most people that we see, we consider perfectly healthy, but they are suffering from quality of life issues, right? And so we help them doing a very customized approach because everybody's so different, right? Everybody has different biochemistries, everybody has different needs, different goals, different approaches, different styles. And so the art of medicine is really about, and this is what Rudy's great at, in order to build something that's customized for the person and their needs. So that's what we focus on, and we cover, anywhere from hormone replacement to IV treatment, peptides, and far more than that. And obviously, psychedelics for wellness as well. So we're very excited to be here.
Thank you very much. You're preaching to the choir. I mean, I've called it age management, and I don't know if there's perfect overlap, but there's certainly substantial overlap in how I've been taught to approach this thing and these things that you do. So I'm very excited. Would love to come and visit your facilities when I'm down there. Hopefully, when I'm down for Wonderland. Our friends at Microdose are throwing that, and would love to visit you guys in person. To get the opportunity to do that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So just to let you guys know about my path to be where I am now. So I'm traditionally trained. I went to University of Miami where I got my MD degree. Then I worked at one of the major hospitals in Miami where I was doing hospital work, dealing with the sickest patients. Conventional medicine, again, traditional Western medicine, we're really good at treating acute cases. If you're dying, you need surgery, you're having a heart attack, the hospital will take care of you. But I was lucky that I was able to step away from the acute medicine, although I've learned a lot there, but I was able to step away and then went into preventive medicine. So I first opened a weight loss clinic because no matter what, the lowest hanging fruit of wellness is nutrition. Is always, what can we do to eat better? So that's always my base. So started helping patients with better nutrition, helping them with their exercise. But I saw that as we're doing this, I had some patients who still could not get to their best, their optimum, the self-actualization, being the best version of themselves. This is what we try to do. So after doing exercise and nutrition, then I went and got a board certification in age management medicine, where I learned how to do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Remember, I went to med school in the 1990s. At that time, testosterone or hormone in general were considered toxins, were considered no-nos. No, people don't need this. So I had to really unlearn what I had learned before and really look at all the new studies that were showing that how, as we get older, and sometimes even at a younger age, any biochemical abnormalities can have such an effect on our physiologic and psychological health. So once I became board certified, I started understanding this. And now it's been 12 years that I've been doing hormone replacement, and we're getting amazing results for our patients. Mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual, in all those different areas, which are all areas that as human beings, we need to optimize. But then I stumbled into psychedelic medicine, which for me was really, and I use the word stumble because really this is not something I ever thought I would talk about. And I'm gonna say something here because your audience is used to talking about psychedelics. My audience, usually when I talk about psychedelics, they're still like, oh my God, you're talking about drugs. This is something, no, doc, what are you talking about? So I really had to, again, unlearn everything I had learned. And I realized that now psychedelics has become the extra tool, the last piece of the puzzle. Once I've optimized somebody's nutrition, once they're doing their exercise, once I've optimized their hormones, their supplements, there was something missing. And for a lot of patients, including me, psychedelics has been the one that's been able to elevate me into that better vibration that is sometimes difficult to explain to people. But when you're in that vibration, you know it. So that's what we help people get to.
Yeah.
Wow, received, guys. Like, what you're doing is groundbreaking. I mean, that's the word that comes to mind. And in terms of patients that come in to work with MHI, are you seeing a trend of any sorts? Because psychedelics is obviously mainstreaming. It's starting to have its moment as an industry, and people are talking about, microdosing and, that article that I came across. It's something that's getting into the zeitgeist. Are you seeing any kind of increase in awareness amongst patients and sort of them being the tip of that spear in dialogue, or how would you sort of characterize that just from your intake?
So we see actually a combination of the two. Again, before I stumbled into psychedelics, what we would see really, the typical patient that comes to us is the patient who tells us, "Doc, I don't feel great. I went to my doctor, all my labs are pretty normal, but I have this unease. I have this, it's not me, I'm not performing at my best." So we would help those patients. Then we have now a lot more patients who are coming to us who have done psychedelics. Again, I'm going to put a little caveat here. Remember, this is not medical, what we're talking about. I'm not recommending anybody to go and do something that is not right now FDA approved, that is not legal. So this is not, has to be considered as medical advice. This is just for information. So we've had a lot of our patients who come to us now on psychedelics, doing it on their own. And then they were doing pretty well. But once now we optimize their biochemistry with the right hormones, the right supplements, and the right nutrition, it's another level. And what I love and why I love talking here, because my psychedelic patients, my travelers are at another level. Once I fix their biochemistry, which is the easy thing for me, the MD, to do. That's the easiest thing. But getting your mindset right, getting that connection right, getting that insight into the deeper mystery of life, unless you can experience that with psychedelic, this is something we cannot put into words. So really, it became such complementary medicine. I don't like to call it alternative. I like to call it complementary. They work together. But all of those are tools that we're using to get people there.
Yeah. That is fascinating. Sorry, Carlos, were you gonna?
No, I think I was just going to harp on what Carlos is saying, that, we have seen an uptick in people seeking for, like Doc says, they go to their general practitioner, they score well on their basic labs, and they're just feeling really lousy. And, maybe the reason why, we're kind of going through this health crisis is, for a different subject for a different day, but we have seen an enormous amount of demand, not only for testosterone treatments, but even, Cialis and these ED medications. And if you look at the age group of people who are purchasing these medications through these companies that do it without a doctor consultation, like Hims and Romans, I mean, they're in the late 20s, early 30s age category. So we are definitely seeing a sort of wave of unwellness, right? People seeking to just feel better because they don't.
It's strange because I was caught in a rut. I'm 48 years old now, and it's hard to change that mindset. And I grew up in an era where it was a moral issue. You don't take testosterone because it's associated with cheating, and part of it, sometimes I look at it as, maybe I am cheating something, but I don't look at it in a negative connotation. As I've said, nature, in a way, it's trying to kill us. We're designed to reproduce and die off, and it's a good thing for the species. It's bad for you as an individual. There's no real advantages to your testosterone level going down. And some people, when I've told them, and I'm very free with this information, that I do testosterone replacement, they say, "Do you have, anger? Your roid rages," they would call them. And I say, no, my mood is actually much more stable because I'm taking an active step towards replacing something that's being lost and not to my benefit. So I look at it as an essential supplementation to do what you call optimizing, rather than just letting nature take its course. And it gives me the energy to do some of the other things that work synergistically. All of a sudden, I have the energy to exercise. I feel good. It's not this thing that's dragging me me down, this dread. I'm looking forward to using this energy that I have because I'm doing these things. But where you took it to a new level is saying psychedelics is part of this wellness picture, which is just, and it seems so complimentary, but it's just not where my mind went. I was just thinking of both of them as these two separate issues, not purposely, but just naturally. That's how my mind had them compartmentalized until we spoke to you. And you sent us this article, Dr. Rudy, on near-death experiences and this John Hopkins study that was fascinating, that compared the profound nature of these near-death experiences to the effects that people get on psychedelics, and found a lot of similarities. And this article was from SciPost.org from a Mr. Steve Taylor, September 28th, 2022. And it was just fascinating. And the fact that John Hopkins is behind it obviously pulls a lot of credibility to it. But the getting over the fear of death, one of the most profound fears you could have in terms of motivating our behavior, and to be comfortable with it in a way that's not resignation, but something that is very accepting and embracing, and yet you feel more connected, not less, and feeling comfortable with death in that sense, to me, again, just so profound. And that we're on just the front porch of this thing is also very, very exciting. But the article's amazing.
That's the beginning. So it's interesting. So there's a lot to unpack with what you said, Jeff. I love it. So first, what you said about the testosterone is really important. So I coined the term T-shaming, testosterone shaming. There's a lot of this happening. So doctors do it, our friends do it. It's always like, oh, you're taking testosterone? Yeah, you're cheating. No, you don't need testosterone. A lot of the patients who come to us would have gone to their doctors, be like, doc, I don't feel great. And they're like, no, you don't need testosterone. You only need it because you want to get juiced. Or you want to get, so you want better sex, so they think just muscles and sex when it comes to testosterone. And I'm very vocal, and I'm on testosterone therapy. I started when I was 48. That's when I hit my wall. That's when I hit that I wasn't optimized. And I refused to get old. I refused to feel like, you know what, this is my time to kind of slow down. I have a lot more to offer. You have a lot more to offer. If we can use the right tools to keep us going even better than we are, and it is not detrimental to your health. Remember, for me, DMD, first do no harm. And if you go on our website, Medical Health Institute, we spend a lot of time dispelling the myths that testosterone is dangerous for you. Of course, I don't take testosterone lightly. It is a medication. It is a controlled substance, but when used for the right patient with the right follow-up, it is life-changing. It is life-changing. So I tell everybody, I'm on testosterone. It made me a better person, a better dad, a better husband, a better physician, a better man, and a deeper person. So number two, that article that I reviewed was so amazing for me. It is, again, so they looked at 3,000 people. So it was a pretty big study. And they looked at 1,000 of them, about 1,000 that had a near-death experience. And they compared the other one that used some kind of psychedelic, one of the big four. And they saw that there were a lot of similarities to them. And what they noticed, that most people, after either an NDE, the near-death experience, or psychedelic, those people really looked at death differently, less fear. They had more meaning into their life, they had a lot of more insights. And why? Because a lot of them, whether it's NDE or psychedelic, they experience a mystical experience. And in my mind, I didn't understand yet what a mystical experience is. The mystical experience, in very simple terms, it is when you do a psychedelic, or whether it can happen, whether you do a deep meditation, prayer, by whatever means necessary. But if you can feel that sensation of unity, harmony, sacredness, transcendence, those are the words that people who go through those sessions repeat over and over. And the studies are very strong, showing that people who experience those mystical types of experiences, there's way more healing happening with it. So we're just starting to understand that. And what I love also, neuroscience, neurophysiology is starting to understand that better. We can even now point to what areas of the brain are having more connectivity when you're doing psychedelics. So for me, again, coming from a science background, although I love the shamanic and sacredness part of it, I needed some kind of scientific explanation. So seeing studies like this, especially backed by big universities, again, it gives it a lot more credibility that I think the public at large needs to know about this. There is help if you're going through those moments of, and you don't have, for example, right now they're using psychedelics a lot. The FDA approval for them, it's mostly for treatment-resistant depression. You're looking at MDMA for complex PTSD. So yes, there is a big place for patients at that end of the spectrum. But what about the patient who just feels like, I need more meaning in my life. I need to stay connected. Like Michael Pollan said, for the betterment of well people, can we use that? And in combination of that biochemical excellence, like we talk about optimizing your testosterone and your nutrition, they work hand to hand to really help you to get to your best life.
Received, and something that's present with me, Dr. Eberwein, thank you for that. That was poetry. You used a little bit earlier the sort of the notion and the word vibration. I think that's spot on, and it's so refreshing to hear a medical professional refer to that. In my personal experiences, just as an anecdotal contribution to this conversation, I've been walking a path with psychedelics for a long time, and for a lesser amount of time, but for enough time now that I can have an opinion. I've also been on the optimization train in full transparency with the Medical Health Institute. So I can personally attest to the notion of the complementary nature of these practices contributing to a unified sense of well-being. And something that I've noticed when I have a psychedelic experience, whichever modality it may be, I think of it like a tuning fork. If we operate at a certain vibration every day, when you have a mystical experience through a psychedelic or a meditation, etc., your vibration goes up. And then, of course, comes the practice of integration. What are you going to do to sustain that and integrate that into your daily life? It's not just about having an experience. That's 1% of it. The real work is thereafter. What I have found, the utilization of testosterone, peptides, proper nutrition, vitamins, etc., also the community that comes with it. When you start surrounding yourself and immersing yourself in the culture of well-being, and you're sharing in that energy, that too keeps your vibration high. And I have people come up to me all the time, man, I'm 43 years old. You have more energy than anybody I know. You're always in a good mood. Well, I'm doing things to help myself get there and to stay there. And it's beautiful stuff. And we're on the right side of history here, gentlemen. And I think the audience is agreeing with us here telepathically. I can feel it. Thank you for receiving that.
Beautifully said, Carlos. Thank you for those words.
I'm here all afternoon. Let's go, man. What do you got? What do you got?
And I'm going to share something very personal right now because today is a very important date for me. So what got me on the path of psychedelic is that my older brother, my best friend, my twin, he was 4 years older than me, Klaus. He committed suicide 5 years ago. And today, September 30th, he would have been 56 today. So how important is this date? And I'm going to tell you, in that article with the NDE, it shows that sometimes transformation usually comes after something significant in your life. Bereavement, a cancer diagnosis, divorce, losing your job. Sometimes you need to go through that pain to be able to go to the other side. So after I lost my brother 5 years ago, I could still work. I was still, like functioning, but I had a deep sense of unease. And, again, full disclosure, I did a session of psychedelic, and it got me to a connection where I really felt like it was almost like a near-death experience for me. And I felt connected. I felt that my brother was with me. And then that got me to a place where I was like, wow, what if I did not find this? How would my life be today, 5 years after that? And how, the synchronicity that we're having this podcast on my brother's birthday and to talk about this. And I like to be very vulnerable about this, to really say that, we're living a human experience. We each have our lows that we go through, the moments where we hit a bottom. What are we going to do? How are you going to use that pain and that bottom? And now I've rebounded from my brother's passing to a level that I never thought I could be. So I look back at this event And I look at it from a different perspective now. I see it as the transformative event in my life that got me to where I am now. So it changed my perspective, and then I look at it different. So this is the power of optimization and psychedelic that can do for any traumatic event. And like you said, I just didn't take a substance. I did it with the proper set and setting, with really somebody guiding me. So again, what we're saying for everybody listening to us, it's not going to a party and taking drugs. That's not what we're talking about. This is taking it with a lot of respect and a lot of guidance to really help you get there. I'm going to cite another study. I'm kind of a nerd. I love studies. There's a new study that just came out from University of Pittsburgh, and that's with ketamine, which I have a clinic in Miami that does ketamine infusion. This is the only psychedelic-like substance that is FDA approved, so that's the one that I use. So ketamine, that study showed that after you do a ketamine infusion, if you get the person to see people smiling and they listen to subliminal positive words, they see that the antidepressive effect lasts longer. So as you said, Los, it is not just what you do during the session, it's what you do after, because you have the receptive, your brain is at its most receptive state after a session like this. So you can put in very positive input, very positive messages, and that will tend to stay with you longer.
Wow. We're running out of time. I can see. I think we're running out of time.
Who cares? This is fun. Let's keep it going.
Usually our producer Anthony pings us, so I think we're still okay. Obviously studies are fantastic. They're what provide us some certainty with regard to the directions that we're going in. One of the things I wanted to talk about is you are I believe, owner, founder of a ketamine clinic that administers these therapies, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so we have the ketamine clinic. It's called Ketamine Lounge. It's in Miami Beach, Florida. And we've done more than 1,000 infusions of ketamine, of course, with the proper setting, with the proper supervision. And we've gotten transformative experiences for our patients. Again, I've done 3 sessions of those with my guide. And my God, it's every time I go, I feel that my vibration, I get to a place and it's difficult to put those into words, right? Yeah. So it's easy to say, everybody has their own one. They're like, oh my God, it was amazing. That was the most amazing experience in my life. I felt one with the cosmos. I felt one with the universe. Transformative. Those are the words that keep coming back. And I love seeing patients go through this and seeing the light in their eyes and that transformation. So ketamine is something that's very dear to my heart because that's the one we can use that. But as we know, I think the first 2 psychedelic treatments that are going to be FDA approved are going to be psilocybin and MDMA. I think by 2024, they're going to be FDA approved. So I cannot wait for that to come there. Do it in the right setting, and use it as another tool. So for me, the optimization physician, I'm a biohacker. I look for any tools that I can do to get you to your best. Mm-hmm. So my tools are nutrition, exercise, hormone balance, improving sleep, optimization of your mindset. And if psychedelic needs to be the one that gets you to the right mindset, when we combine all of those together, in the middle of all this, that's where the sweet spot is.
Wow.
And one point I wanted to make also, again, to go back a little bit to the science, why I feel testosterone and psychedelics tend to be complementary, because a lot of the psychedelics, they act on the serotonin receptor. That modulates the serotonin receptor, and that's how it can do a lot of profound changes in our mood and our behavior. Well, guess what? Testosterone also modulates and acts on the serotonin receptor and also the dopamine receptor. So it's actually complementary. Actually, one of my patients asked me that one time. They were saying, are you at risk of having what we call the serotonin syndrome when you take testosterone plus psychedelics? Because is it too much stimulation of the serotonin syndrome? And I can say, yes, there are some medication that can cause the serotonin syndrome that we have to be careful with. But the way testosterone acts on the serotonin receptor, there are no possibility of serotonin syndrome when you add psychedelic to it. But it may be, once I realized that the common denominator of those 2 substances, like Jeff, like you said, you thought they were two different silos, right? They were separate. Well, the common denominator of those is the serotonin receptor.
Wow.
Well, let me ask another question. Obviously, you're into the studies, doesn't surprise us, in the science and the research. And hopefully that, it seems like we're going to be on track to get a lot more of that, which is great. But based on the studies that you've seen and what we know now, would you be comfortable prescribing MDMA and psilocybin and ayahuasca to some of your patients, not just the ketamine that's approved, obviously, on Schedule 3, but do you think that we're at the point where the benefits outweigh the risk and you would be ready to prescribe them regardless of what the regulators were doing? If Lord Dr. Rudy were in charge, would we already be using this stuff?
Well, the studies are very strong, and the studies are not coming from me. They're coming from Johns Hopkins, from NYU, from the Imperial College of London, how they're showing how amazing. It's going into the mainstream media now. Netflix has that special from Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind. His book is amazing. So
fantastic special.
Enough evidence. The problem is it's a very slow change to get the FDA to approve this, to get to DEA to change it. So yes, put me in charge, and I would change that completely right now. And I have to say, we are in the midst of a psychedelic renaissance, but we have to be careful that we do it the right way, so that the same thing that happened in the 70s, well, because of the counterculture and not done the right way, and it was taken away from us. We've lost 50 years of research because of this. And when you look back at the literature back in the 70s, the studies on psychedelics with addiction, with psychology. Now we're seeing that right now, again, they're replicating those studies. Ketamine, psilocybin, MDMA for the use for addiction, for alcohol addiction, drug addiction. Look how much addiction we have in our world. Wouldn't we want to do things differently? And we have the studies there. Of course, I will never go outside of my scope of practice. I still respect the FDA, the DEA. I will wait until they become FDA approved, but the next day I will start practicing and prescribing them.
And in the, like Doc always says, in the right setting, right? And it's, has a whole process of symptomatology, the right person, the right sort of symptoms and conditions for it to happen, for sure.
And we don't want to discount the risk. And I know just personally, I tend to be too much of a cheerleader. And when you get into that mindset, sometimes you ignore risk, and then you only realize that, evidence of it was there the whole time. And you were so focused on moving ahead and so against how it was treated previously that maybe you went too fast, you went too far in the other direction. But from the promise in these studies, the fact that there's such low incidence of addiction or even strong habit forming behaviors, these tools are, in most of the opinions I've seen, severely underutilized.
You're right, and that's really important. Again, for me, DMD, my first Hippocratic oath was first do no harm. Yeah. So before I go into anything, I do a lot of studies. Again, a nerd, I'll go into the research. That's why I did my research on testosterone and see how many misconceptions and myths there were there. Actually, I'm writing a book on testosterone to really try to educate not only the public, even a lot of physicians, my colleagues, who don't know about this. Second, when it comes to psychedelics, same thing. The first thing with my preconceived ideas was that those were drugs. And because when you look at MDMA, ketamine, Special K, some of them do have a potential for abuse and addiction. But when used in the right setting, when used with the right facilitator, the risk of side effects, the risk of addiction is really minimal. It needs to be done the right way, and more studies are ongoing. But so far, the needle is pointing towards way more benefit and very little downside to it.
Yeah. And Jeff, just to kind of harp on what Doc's saying on our previous conversation, this is where the optimization kind of in psychedelics get married, where if you have someone who feels really lousy, right, and they go through a psychedelic experience to try to make themselves feeder, and they might gain a lot, they might get a lot of insight or expanded awareness. But if they're not optimized, that ride is quickly going to go down, right? And so the potential problem becomes that the person is now chasing that experience, right? Chasing that high and chasing, the next ceremony or what have you. And you and I talked about my experience with 5-amino DMT, which was profound, right? To say the least, but I never felt like I needed to do it again, right? Like I didn't have the need. I felt like I had enough. Because as I travel through my journey, I live an optimized lifestyle. So I felt great before. I used it as an experience that gave me an expanded awareness and just sort of like a reminder of what my purpose in the world is. And then I never had the need to schedule my next appointment. So there was no chase for the high because I was already doing the right things, as Carlos says, prior to that. And this was just a tool of an extra tool of optimization. Right?
Yeah, and I very similar experience, of course, and with 5-MeO DMT. But I felt like when I did it, and I'm scared of everything. I was raised Roman Catholic, highly introverted, scared to death of everything, my own shadow, and scared of things that might change my mind. Even if I'm stressed out, which I am, and constantly, narcissistic, but I did this because Los had said that this is going to be a profound experience, and he was absolutely correct. And setting everything, a lot of care taken into it. And when I was sitting there getting ready to do it, I remember the shaman was talking to me, and I was like, wow, he's really serious about this, because my experience with drugs previously had been nothing like this. You go, I never really bought them, but I always had friends, and it was a recreational thing. It was a fun thing. And this was clearly something different. But when I was done, I realized, wow, now I get it. I understand why they presented it the way they did. I understand why I took it so seriously. I understood why my state of mind was so important to him in terms of going on this journey. But it was like you took a pressure washer and washed the stress away from my mind, and the effect, that mood lasted. One of the reasons I decided to do this, because I didn't have a lot of experience with psychedelics, is because I heard that 10 to 15 minutes, it's gone. And I could drive home, and I did. And it was fine. But for the next month or so, there was just this feeling of wellness, of connection, that it was just very enjoyable, but not addictive in any way. And again, the most profound experience I've had in my life with regard to anything. It's difficult for me to describe the experience. I can't do it. But I
don't think anybody can, by the way.
It was like. I was on the ride, but I wasn't driving. I was in the back seat. I saw everything that was going on, but I was not in control. And I remember the drumming that was kind of connecting me to the people in the room and what was going on, and connecting me to that original reality that I was being, put aside from and looking at. And it was just, I remember the drumming and the beat and the chanting, but I couldn't see that. I couldn't see any of it, even though my eyes were wide open. I was seeing something else. Fascinating experience, non-addictive, profound, and a deep sense of wellness and well-being and connection.
And the same, by the way, the same thing goes for ketamine. And this is the beauty that it is FDA approved, right? Because we've seen the studies, and, Doc's great at this. And we've seen what it does with depression and suicidal thoughts. I mean, the data is just mind-blowing, right? But then we got into sort of, why can we use this for wellness, right? Why can we use this for optimization? So I'll give you some kind of examples to bring them to life. We recently did this with one of our partners. Here's a guy who has everything that he needs in his life financially. He knows that him and his family have nothing ever to worry about. He's master in accounting, super smart guy. And he had the experience, and at the end of it, he said, wow, this has been the most intense experience of my life. And I've realized that I need to be a life force, that my spirituality is lacking, and that I need to work on that. Right. Here's a guy who seemingly had everything. And, in another example, so now he has an expanded sense of self, of awareness, and he's not chasing the high. He said, I got enough. This was mind blowing to me. I saw, the same thing that Doc talks about, the pattern being connected to the universe and all this stuff. And that was enough for him. Right.
Yeah.
A similar sort of more negative experience we've seen, because I'm kind of on the ground. We deal with a lot of high level CEOs. And I always give the example that if you're a high level CEO and you run your own companies, or you run 7 companies, you have kids and all this stuff, and life is just going at 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, you're always connected, right? And that stuff sort of drains you psychologically and even spiritually. So, a lot of people will say, hey, you know what? I needed a break. I'm going to Fiji, right? And you could go to Fiji, you could go to the furthest place in the world and never really get to disconnect. This really happened to my brother recently, where he experienced professional burnout, right? And we have a lot of guys that experience professional burnout. And so here's an opportunity of taking a vacation to the moon, where you have no choice but to disconnect. Like, it completely disconnects you from the world and it brings you to the source, right? And now you have to get that experience in 1 hour, right? And you get to download all of this wisdom, right? That would take lifetimes to achieve. And then now the person comes back refreshed. He gets the reminder of who he is, why he's here. And so these are sort of the tools that we use. Obviously, you have to pick the person, you have to listen to the patient, but we've used this successfully for people to come back and get a sort of like a reinvigorated sense of why they're here and to continue to do the work that they do. Right?
Yeah, I wish I could, take someone with the mindset that I used to have, and I was raised Roman Catholic and very distrustful, like most of the Roman Catholics I know, very judgmental and narrow-minded and judgmental of myself, that self-guilt and just very wary of trying new things, which can be a benefit in some cases. But of course, sometimes it will turn you off from something that is very, very helpful. I mean, I wish I could take the people like that had my previous mindset with a cattle prod and get them over to see you guys and experience this. And then probably spend some time in jail for doing so. But I would like to, if I could herd them over there, I would, knowing that for someone like me, I would have been profoundly grateful if someone had, opened up my mind and my willingness to accept this information earlier than I did.
Jeff, Jeff, and I posit to you that you are actually doing that right now.
I hope so.
So one thing again that optimization and psychedelic did for me, one of my favorite songs is All You Need Is Love, right? All You Need Is Love. I never understood that song until I really did my first experience, and I experienced love with a capital L. So that love is that high vibration energy. And then that energy, once you connect to it, we talk a lot about this. When you do an experiment like this, it's almost like you take a whiff of the divine. You get a glimpse of love. And then when you get back, you're like, oh my God, it's there. And how do you get that vibration again? It's the vibration of clarity. It's the vibration of gratitude, the vibration of passion, the vibration of service. So what is there not to want as an individual, instead of having the vibration of envy, jealousy, and all those low vibrations? Wouldn't you want to have those higher type vibrations and be able to tap into this more often? The more often you do this, the more you can tap into it. And again, what I'm excited about is that there is truly a renaissance. Our world is in trouble right now. You look at everywhere in the world, there is something to really be sad about. I'm from Haiti originally. Haiti is going through horrible moments now. The world is going through horrible moments, but I'm the eternal optimist that through difficult times, and especially with this that we're going through now, and the consciousness revival that I'm seeing, I'm staying optimist. I'm staying big time that, you know what, we're going to come out of this stronger, more connected, more compassionate, and more amazing than before.
God bless. Amen, brother. Yes. Yes.
And I think the timing of this, sometimes, I don't necessarily believe or disbelieve in fate. It's just, or things happening for a reason. But sometimes I see us, looking at this tool at a societal level with much more acceptance, and hopefully it's going to continue in that direction. But you see what's going on in the world, how we're, it seems like the world always comes up with more efficient ways to stress us out, and right now it's more so than that than ever. But even what's going on the political level, it's crazy what's going on in Ukraine. Russia has just annexed 4 territories in Ukraine. Ukraine has just applied to NATO for membership, and that's a powder keg right there. And someone's going to have to back off. There's got to be some people that say, wait a minute, let's step back, because this escalation is significant. Russia's saying they're going to use nuclear weapons to protect their territory, and they're about to make this their territory. So it's just it's almost not even, doesn't even seem real. At least seems like something that should have been in the movies in the 80s when I was growing up, that they would, some crazy screenwriter would come up with this plot line to get us into theaters. It's actually happening. But also we're getting a tool that connects us, and it just seems like it's the exact right time when we need it the most.
Jeff and Los, we got to say, we are doing our part in that work with the optimization, and now with the addition of the psychedelics. But I love what you guys are doing to really bring that message. Sure. People need to hear that, and they need to hear that first. They need to hear the science of it and know that, okay, they need to hear the sacredness of it, and they need to hear both the benefits and the possible side effects. Although I can say, as the guy who's really looking into the science, the side effects are pretty low. The side effects are minimal, and they can be mitigated. There's so much upside to this than downsides. And one quick point I wanted to do, ketamine is FDA approved, and it's not ketamine, it's specific, it's S-ketamine, which is the nasal spray that's FDA approved for treatment-resistant depression and suicidal thoughts. And we use IV ketamine as a, this is not what's FDA approved, but we still use it, and we'll have our patients sign a consent that this is really going to be, we're using this to help you. The results, the transformative effects that we've had with our patients has just been phenomenal.
Well, we have our follow-up episode, gentlemen. So it's in Miami, in Florida. We're going to go to the ketamine lounge. We're going to do some infusions and then straight to MHI. Right, to do the optimization, and I volunteer that Jeff will be the patient. So Jeff, just get ready, man. You're in the best possible hands.
I trust you guys. It really seems not only do you know what you're doing, but you experience a great sense of fulfillment in it, and I think your patients will just benefit from that immensely. I'd like to be one of them.
Amen, guys. Let's do it. Let's go.
Do it. Hey, I'd be okay with recording it and doing it. I don't know what. Wow. There's probably some things that we have to work out in terms of getting that done, but I'd be totally for it. If it gets people who, like I used to be, that just wouldn't consider it and look at it like, again, as a defensive thing, as opposed to, which it can be, but also as a proactive thing to be your best self. If it'll get people thinking in that direction and considering it with an open mind, it's worth it. Let's do it.
Audience, you heard it here first.
I want to commend you, like Doc said, on the work that you were doing. We're deep believers, and going back to what you said about people thinking of cheating and that this stuff is dangerous. Like, we spend so much time, and Carlos, you've been through our process, so I think you could attest. We spend so much time, energy, resources, money, you name it, in the education of the patient, right? Now, because it's so important for us to have you understand not only what you're doing, but more importantly, why you're doing it, right? So that you don't just have to take our word for it. I mean, the deeper and more intellectually involved that you become in your process, we see that results maximize, and you have generally a much better experience, right, Carlos? I mean, you've become a pro in a very short amount of time, and it's only because you've kind of thrown the ball at us, right? You've played with us and you've asked questions, and how does this work, and why does this do it? And so we spent a lot of time, and the fact that you guys are doing this, I applaud you, because people do need to know, and it has to be through the proper mediums, of course. Obviously, doing it through a doctor that knows what he's doing, that believes in this, that is passionate about it, that is also has a defense of science on his side and the studies and all of that. But the fact that you're doing this actively to educate people, I applaud you, because we need it in this time.
Thank you, brother. We're doing it together. We're doing it together, guys.
Yep.
And guys, let's take a step back for a minute. Let's look at the 4 of us here, right? Yeah. We have a lawyer, a doctor, an amazing businessman, 2 amazing business guys. And the four of us, and I like that we're all very vulnerable in talking about this, we're all optimized on testosterone, and we've all gotten the last piece of the psychedelics. And we look at all of us, we met when? 4 months ago, not even that much. I feel such a connection to you. And I feel this is what optimization brings. It brings such a deeper level of goodness, getting the best out of the person, getting connected, getting compassion and empathy, still at the same time being like the type of guy who wants to lead, who wants to really succeed. Before I used to almost be ashamed of my success at times. But now once you go deep like this, you're like, no, I'm going to continue being the badass, continuing to succeed, continuing to lead. But at the same time, I'm deeply connected. I'm deeply grateful. I feel deep love for my fellow humans. And that duality of, yes, I want to keep pushing, but at the same time, I'm good and I'm enough right here, right now. That is the duality of life that I've learned to understand. And if one can get this, to get those two together and not letting one take over the other, this is when you live, I call it your best life.
Thank you. Received. Poetry.
And let's end with that because I think we may have two. So the editors that have to listen to all of this and somehow cut it down, they always say keep it to 32 because now they've got to listen to a lot more and figure out what to cut. I don't know what they're going to cut.
I'm going to give you a fair warning. Whenever you're talking to MHI, you're definitely going to go over the time.
You're going to go. It's 2 episodes.
Yes, it may be 2 episodes. I think.
By the way, not crazy.
We're far closer to 2 than we are to 1. I can tell you that right now.
Not crazy.
A little while ago, our producer Anthony told us we were at the 45-minute mark.
It feels like 5 minutes.
We were just going on. It does, and I could continue talking about all this stuff. We haven't even gotten to our common. We touched on it a little bit, but our common Catholic upbringing, how we feel about that, and how's that affected who we are as a person. But I could talk about that all day, although that's probably a little bit too far afield from where we're going. But again, the general topic of psychedelics fitting into the overall wellness picture, I can't think of anything that's more important. So thank you very much for joining us. And we do want to follow up. And if we could do something with the effect, with perhaps bringing a treatment episode on board, I would love to do that because I could use the treatment and I would love to share.
Love it. And audience, remember to catch us and all this amazing content at psychedelia.live and to subscribe to the magazine.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Rudy. Thanks, Carlos.
Thank
you, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.